Thank you. All right, great. Well, so excited to have you all back in person, at least half of you. We have our other half. We have 35 people participating via Zoom this morning. We're so excited to welcome everyone to the June HICP meeting. Excited to be back here once again at LA General and have a fabulous, fabulous program for you, as always. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Next slide, please. Of course, we are kicking off the month of June and want to welcome everyone to celebrate Happy Pride. We have some Pride conchas in the back of the room and invite you to enjoy one of those, and hope you have some fabulous events and celebrations you'll be participating in the month ahead. Next slide. This is, of course, also the month where we celebrate Juneteenth, Freedom Day. And on June 19th, our facilities will be closed in celebration of that event. And I know Jorge and his team will be sharing a little bit more about what the hospital will be doing to recognize Juneteenth. Next slide. We are here, of course, with the Health Innovation Community Partnership. Today's meeting is, of course, hosted half of us in person here in the inpatient tower and the other half participating via Zoom. Next slide. The meeting is being recorded and will be available, posted on our hicpla.org website in about a week's time. We also encourage people participating via Zoom to be full participants in this meeting. Put your questions in the chat, raise a hand if you'd like to ask a question out loud. We always want our meetings to be interactive and engaging. This is our community conversation, and we encourage you to fully participate. We also want to acknowledge that this meeting is simultaneously available in Spanish, both via the Zoom link as well as in person. So if you are one of our Zoom participants, click the language of your choice via the globe selection at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, and we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide. Today's meeting, we're delighted to have, of course, leadership from our medical center to give us some updates about happenings at our hospital. We also welcome wonderful colleagues from the Department of Mental Health to share with us an exciting story about transitioning of some services from LA General to DMH. We will also have an update on some of the campus projects in development right now, including the next phases of the restorative care village, where incredible additional mental health resources will be made available here on our campus. And then we'll go ahead and talk about some of the housing and other development projects that are happening here at LA General. And of course, we'll leave some time at the end for any partner announcements. So if you have things you want to bring forward to this body, please get those ideas ready. We will get to you at about 10:30. Next slide. As we begin, I'll go ahead and read out the guiding principles that were a part of the founding of this organization back in 2017 and guide the time we spend together. All participants agree to basic principles prioritizing equity, community resilience, and health in all programs and projects. All participants agree to approach issues with an open mind, be willing to engage in dialogue, and commit to thinking boldly about solutions. Participants will state views and ask genuine questions. Participants will seek to avoid monologues and arguments, move to conversations where participants are curious, and seek to understand various points of view. Participants will explain their reasoning and intent. We will share how we reach our conclusions so that others can understand our divergent reasoning. Participants will attack the problem and not the person, organization, or institution. Participants will define key terms so we can attain a shared understanding. Participants will share all relevant information. Participants will always arrive prepared for a meeting. During meetings, only one person speaks at a time. We will not engage in sidebar conversations. Participants will work to develop a comprehensive, common set of information with which to solve problems and make decisions. Participants will jointly design next steps. With that, I turn the podium over to our fabulous colleagues at LA General. I invite Dr. Brad Spellberg and Jorge Orozco together to walk us through the slides.
Buenos dias and welcome to LA General. I just want to extend a very warm welcome to our campus here. And this is such a great, important meeting for us as a medical center, as this medical center really belongs to all of you, our community, and your voice matters. Your voice really helps us find direction, helps us define priorities. So we're so pleased that you are all here and joined us. I have a few updates just to share about our campus and what's going on. So LA General was recognized as a leader in LGBTQ plus healthcare quality in 2024. And this is a designation that is given to hospitals that have demonstrated certain standards in how we deliver care. So we have non-discrimination and staff training for our staff. We have patient services and support that are uniquely targeted to this population. We have employee benefits and policies that really recognize the unique needs of our LGBT plus community. We have patient and community engagement activities and responsible citizenship. So there are standards, and we've attained for the last several years the highest recognition. We just want to invite all of you to join us for our movie marathon in celebration of Pride Month. And so we have all these featured films here that will be screened here from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we're giving all our employees the day off so that they can come watch. But you are all invited. Next. Juneteenth. We always celebrate that here on our campus, and you're invited on Tuesday, June 18th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in our breezeway and courtyard right outside. We are going to have food, music, entertainment, education. So thank you so much for our sponsors, CARES, Morrison's, First City, Colonial Life, for helping us put this on. Opioid addiction, something that plagues our community. And we have done a lot of work here at LA General to really address this. Now, Dr. Spellberg, I'm going to invite our Chief Medical Officer to speak about opioid and our work here, but also the important work that we do here to address heart attacks in our community and our performance in delivering amazing care to it.
We have built over the last few years a really world-class addiction medicine service led by Dr. Rebecca Trotsky-Sir, who is truly brilliant and a real advocate, both for patients and for her community, with other team members that have been brought on as well. And one of our foci has been to reverse the long-standing trend in medicine to just give everybody opiates when they come in the door of a hospital, which unfortunately has a tendency to result in people becoming addicted to opiates. I mean, for many years, the medical community sort of didn't realize the damage it was causing. But we have much more effective drugs now. For example, we have buprenorphine and derivatives that are non-addictive versions of opiates that can successfully treat pain. And we have studies showing that non-steroidals in certain circumstances are actually more effective for acute pain than opiates are. And so we have been, for the last couple of years, consistently placed on the state honor roll for appropriate use of opiates, and are very proud of those efforts that the addiction medicine team has led. Next slide. Do you want me to do the trauma symposium? Okay, so I don't know if folks here know, our trauma team is literally world-class. Dr. Dimitriades, who is our chief of trauma surgery and has been for decades, has trained really like 2/3 of the trauma chairs across the United States. He trained them. It's amazing. This guy is a legend. And Jorge went to China with him, was it last year? Because he's very famous in China, as it turns out, due to his textbook. And he's helped several major municipalities in China start their own trauma programs. Jorge told me, this guy's like a rock star in China. People will line up like he's a rock star to get his autograph. And for 30 years now, he has been sponsoring an annual symposium on trauma surgery, and people from all over the world fly to Pasadena because Dr. Dimitriades asked them to come to his trauma symposium. And it's just quite amazing. I introduced the chair of trauma surgery at Estonia, who flew to Pasadena because he knows Demi. We just are blessed to have a truly remarkable group of trauma surgeons. They are the best in the world. And it's an honor to have them in our campus providing care to our community. Next slide. Okay, so heart attacks. A heart attack is caused when one of the arteries in your heart is blocked and blood is no longer flowing to the muscle in your heart and it starts to die off. And so the best way to treat that is to open the artery so blood can flow again. And so STEMI centers, these are the most severe kinds of heart attacks called STEMIs, are specialized centers that are trying to get those arteries open as fast as possible. We have a truly amazing director of our STEMI center, Dr. Anil Mehra. The guy he's the Demi of STEMIs. He has gotten our service to the point where as a public hospital, as a government-owned, operated public hospital, we have the fastest time in Los Angeles County from the time a person with a heart attack arrives in the ER to the time that artery is opened. We beat Cedars-Sinai, we beat UCLA. And this has been, I think, for 3 or 4 of the last 5 or 6 years. And once again, this year, we are the fastest. So if you have a heart attack in LA County, this is where you want to be. We're going to get your artery open and your heart muscle working again. And it's a truly amazing achievement that this entire team has achieved here. So we're very proud of that. Oh, yeah. You can advance. The graphs are so confusing. I don't even know if I understand them all. Just we're us at the end and shorter is better. So lower is better. And you can see we beat all these other hospitals and all the other famous hospitals in LA like Cedars and UCLA and stuff are on there. And we beat them all. So that's awesome.
Go ahead, next. This also shows that we beat them all. So thank you so much. We're happy to entertain any questions or thoughts that you all might have.
Que también, perdón, buenos días, respetables personas. No tengo una pregunta. Solamente quiero decir que en mi proceso de cirugía de cáncer, muchas personas que estuvieron en el mismo tiempo de proceso tuvieron éxito y quiero decir que también son muy exitosos en cirugía de cáncer. Mi cirugía de cáncer fue colorectal superior y quiero decir que es muy, muy excelente el servicio y a mi esposa le hicieron cirugía de 2 tumores y después de cirugía de corazón abierto. Así que es un privilegio tener el Centro Médico de Los Ángeles.
Muchas gracias. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to let you know that also when it comes to cancer surgery, I had a very eventful cancer surgery. I am very grateful. It's very innovative. And also I was able to have my cancer, upper colon cancer, and I had very good results. My wife also had 2 tumors. She had surgery. She went through surgery, and it's a very, very good outcome. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you.
It's so nice to hear that kind of recognition, and just so that you all are reminded of our mission. Our mission is to provide world-class care and education to our community, and we're always striving for that. And so these are important examples of that. So thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for this comment. Our surgical oncology team, the cancer surgeons, have been hired on the county side. So we have been making a move to switch away from contractor physicians to county employed physicians. The director of our surgical cancer program is the past president of the American Cancer Society. He is the editor of the most famous surgical oncology journal in the world. He is a truly world-class surgeon, and he has helped us hire several people that are of the equal quality. And so this is the dedication and commitment that we have to our community, is we have decided that having a contracted labor force in many cases is not the right way to go. Now, in some cases, they are the right people, but taking this work over and hiring the best people to do the job gives you that kind of high quality care that you experience. So thank you for that comment.
All right. Well, thank you so much, leadership of LA General. Always wonderful to hear the updates of the community events happening, but of course, most importantly, the incredible medical care that's offered here on this campus. I want to make also a plug for our LA, for the primary care department here at LA General that is hosting a cervical cancer screening event this Saturday. And that is to get in advance and do diagnoses earlier so that treatment outcomes can be improved. So in addition to the wonderful care you receive after diagnosis, there's a lot of prevention work that happens here too. And we want to invite you to come out and join us at LA General Primary Care Department for cervical cancer screening and some other services. I don't know, Carla, if there's anything else you want to kind of lift up about that event on Saturday.
So at LA General, we're always thinking about equity and cancers. Cancers are one of the things that we know that we need to fill some important gaps with. So primary care is leading the way in making sure that we're getting people screened for breast cancer, cervical cancer, and making sure that we're up to date with their diabetes care, hypertension care. So they're having these amazing health fairs on the weekends that are really patient-centered, because sometimes people can't come during the week, right? They're at work. So they're having these weekend events and they are just phenomenal. And, you know, we get so much, you know, like good response from that. So very happy to be able to collaborate with primary care on that.
Thank you so much. And those events are held on a bi-monthly basis. So if you are not able to make it this weekend, there will be one in the future coming soon. Next up, we are so delighted to welcome to join us here at HICP today some of the senior leadership of the Department of Mental Health for LA County. There's an exciting transition in the works in terms of really elevating the service model for mental health services from LA General to the Department of Mental Health. With that, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Curly Bonds to the podium to tell us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Heather. So I'm Curly Bonds. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the County Department of Mental Health. And I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Stacy Williams and Evelio Franco. I'll be introducing them later during this presentation. So late last year, the Department of Mental Health was notified by the Department of Health Services of their plans to close down the adult outpatient clinic, affectionately known as the AOC, over on the campus here at LA General Hospital. I think there were a number of complicated decisions. It was a business decision in part, but historically, the Department of Mental Health has always provided services for both adults and children throughout the entire county who have severe and persistent mental health needs. And when we were approached, it was a challenge, but there was also a message that in addition to transferring the patients from the clinic here, that there was a residency program run by USC that was attached to this clinic. And the Department of Mental Health over the last several years has been working to increase our footprint in residency training, because one of the challenges nationwide is that we simply do not have enough psychiatrists and we don't train enough psychiatrists. So the opportunity for us to embrace this program and provide them with what we think will be an exemplary training experience, while also attempting to meet the needs of those clients who were being displaced by the clinic closure, is where I came into the picture. So I've had a lot of collaborative discussions, I think probably both in person, by email, and over the Zoom or Teams over the last several months. And this is culminating with the switch that will happen starting this July. One of the things that accelerated this change was that for residency programs to be viable and to be accredited, they have to continue to function. So the idea of just putting a pause or shutting down the clinic temporarily and not taking on new patients just simply was not an option. And it's also best that these transitions happen around the beginning of the academic year, which is July 1. And as a former program director for a residency program and chair of a department of psychiatry, I realized that there are many complex emotions that come up with change management. So hopefully, if we're successful, by the end of this presentation, I can explain, at least from my perspective, what the Department of Mental Health is doing to really step up to the plate to make sure that no one is left behind. Next slide, please. So the location that we talked about when we first discovered that this change was happening, we wanted to be convenient. You know, just like in real estate, the number one rule of healthcare is location, location, location. They need to be accessible services that are nearby. And we didn't want to make any assumptions, but when we did an analysis of all of our clinics that we directly operate, we discovered that the Northeast Mental Health Center, which is in this photograph, which is fairly recently renovated and built, is the best location. Next slide, please. This is the address for those of you who are not familiar with it. And this is another exterior of the building. It is a county facility. The one thing that people will appreciate is that it has lots of parking for staff as well as for clients. It has very roomy and safe environments for patient care. It also has a dedicated staff led by Mr. Franco, who is the program manager for this clinic. And we began to meet starting with the faculty and staff, and then also with the resident physicians, because we knew they would be impacted by this transition. We wanted to make sure that their needs were heard and that as much as possible, we could decrease any disruptions. Next slide, please. So as the crow flies, the distance between the current clinic and the new location for the clinic is 1.6 miles. So it's about 4 minutes by auto. Of course, anybody who lives in Los Angeles knows that that's a very variable number, but on a good day with reasonable traffic, it's about 4 to 5 minutes. I think for public transportation, DMH makes the same decisions that DHS makes when citing clinical sites to make sure they're accessible to public access, public transportation. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there is a training component to this program, and these are the 12, I don't know if they're PGY 3s or 4s, but these are the people who are receiving this training. They're extraordinary in terms of their backgrounds and their diversity, and they've been taking care of folks. And they've probably been the most vocal in this change, advocating for their patients. I'm really proud to say that we've been able to listen and meet many of their needs. Next slide. Coordination of care. You know, in addition to accessibility, there's also making sure that people get continuity. We know that a provider who's providing mental health services, there is a therapeutic alliance that establishes, and even though residency is only 4 years, those bonds can be quite strong. And we wanted to make sure that as residents were moving, that their schedules moved with them. We also wanted to make sure that their medical records, which are in a different system, because DMH and DHS, although we're both in the same county family, we have different medical records, and making sure that we have our IT departments communicate about how we can seamlessly transition the records from this location over to that location. And of course, the doctors, when they leave, they'll be taking many of the patients with them. So we have a person who's been set aside full-time on the site at this location to help people figure out how to navigate over to the Northeast Center. That person is Evangelina Gonzalez. I put her name here. I will acknowledge that she has worked very hard. I think on days when it gets busy, we've discovered that we might need to get some additional backup support for her in terms of telephone support. But this is her contact number, email address. So for those people who feel like they might have not had their needs met yet, this is the point person from the DMH side who's helping out with this transition. Next slide. I will mention that there are other team members, like I mentioned, who are here with me. Evelio, who is the program manager, is working hard on things like making sure that they get laptops. Just a moment ago, we had a conversation about making sure that the residents have access to the building because it is a secure building that requires a card key. All of the technical parts about this, Evelio is the point person, and then above him in our hierarchy is Stacy Williams, who's the service area chief for service area 4. She's working with staff, including those child and adolescent clients, because we realize that in the case of child services, they are actually sometimes more difficult to access than adult clients. It's simply a numbers game. We don't train enough adult psychiatrists. We also don't train enough child and adolescent psychiatrists. But let me reassure you that when we have done an analysis of the roughly 150 kids who need to get services, over half of them have already been linked with appointments. We're making available to
federal prosecutor
calendars that have actual appointment slots so that in real time we can schedule folks when they call up. And there are and may be occasional missteps, but if that happens, Stacy has agreed to kind of help troubleshoot for that. So again, DMH is doing everything that we possibly can to step up to this challenge. And I want to personally thank Stacy and Evelio. And I think somewhere on the call is Jen Hallman, who's been our QA person, who's been looking at timeliness of care, access to care. And when we hear about problems, because people are quite vocal, you know, I have to say the DMH team listens. We have an advocacy component. I oversee the Office of Family and Consumer Affairs. So I do know that people let us know when things aren't going smoothly. And with the transition of this magnitude, it's inevitable that everything won't go perfectly, but our commitment is to make sure that we address those concerns when they come up. Next slide, please. So there may be questions, which I thought maybe a discussion, because this is a community forum, would be better than me giving, say, an academic lecture about what's going to happen. So I'm happy to try to address whatever questions I can.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We're happy to take your questions. I'll take them in the order that I see them, but we'll make sure we get to everyone.
So I have several questions. You don't know me, but they know me. I just have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna just give you a couple and then give other people chances to ask. So why are we changing the services from DHS to DMH? As far as mobility, I mean the rationale, and then the mobility and accessibility concerns. So I'll tell you that before the building that you're suggesting that people use, I am from Northeast and I work with a lot of individuals that are from the area. And the previous building that they had, once that the people they left that building, a lot of them stopped getting services because I'm not sure exactly why. Some of it might be the location, not being able to access it and stuff. So that's really important, and really being able to tell the clients, like, this is we're going to be maybe taking them there, because a lot of the clients that I work with are very, very challenged. So as far as the location. So then also, if I am assigned to a clinic and have a barrier such as mobility, ADA, or other issues, can it be reassigned back to DHS, LA General? If I live in East LA, what is my option? Will my appointment be close by? So remember, Northeast, East LA is a little like farther. And then as far as, do you offer rideshare services similar to those provided by LA General? And then the adolescents, that's one that's very, very important, because we know that there's very limited services. So maybe really focusing on those, because I work for Exodus, and I know that it's the services with adolescents, it's really limited. And I have a lot of people that it's hard for us to connect the children to services. So I'll just stop there.
Okay. I will do my best.
Are you ready to go through the list?
Okay, I'll try to run through this list and give answers to the questions that I know the answer to, and some I may have to get help from colleagues. In terms of the why, like I pointed out, DMH was informed of this decision. We were not the drivers for it. So I think after I finish, I'll allow my colleagues from DHS to give more details about the why. As far as the accessibility, our building at Northeast serves the same essential population. We have people that have accessibility issues. It is a law in this state to have ADA accessibility. That's the Adults or the Disabilities Act. So the building should be accessible. I don't know about the old building. I can only speak to the one where people are receiving services now. When it comes to rideshare services or van pools and those sorts of things where people had support, if those things were in place at this program, the services are very symmetrical. We should be able to accommodate those things as well. And that's why we have case managers on site. In fact, one of the things we've learned in this transition is that the DMH programs may be more robustly staffed with some of the support individuals as compared to having a resident do the entire business of, I guess, care coordination. When you talk about location, so Northeast is the site where the residency program will be relocating to. And we make the assumption that a large number of clients will want to keep their same psychiatrist. that means if you want to go there, it'll be offered as a first option. It's the closest in proximity, but we have many, many other clinics just in service area 4. There's a downtown clinic. We also have Arcadia. We also have, help me out here, Roybal. And so those are other options. And if someone lives outside of this service area, which is service area 4, I think of it mostly as the downtown adjacent service areas, then we will link you to those services. In fact, in our investigation, we found out that a few clients were from the Antelope Valley who were traveling to USC. So of course, we would try to find them a clinic that's closer to their home. And not everybody wants to receive services close to their home, I'll point out. Some folks, because of stigma or confidentiality concerns, they may prefer to be seen in a clinic that's not in their backyard. So for those needs, that's why we have a case manager who's working with people to do appropriate relocation. With child services, again, it is a challenge, I won't deny that, but we have been able to meet the medical necessity requirements in terms of the folks who we've linked. Those appointments are happening within 2 to 3 weeks. And in terms of location, the average location to travel is about 2 to 3 miles. So I would say that the child services, while they are more challenging, we're stepping up to that plate and amplifying our efforts to provide DHS with resources. I've been talking with Dr. Kashijian about how we can make sure that nobody gets left behind, and that's our commitment.
Thank you. We're going to go pivot to the Zoom room and take some of the questions that have shown up there. I'd like to invite Ari Arambula to ask your question. Ari, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate your statement that this was not your idea. You're making the best of it, and I appreciate that. Appreciate the point person. Questions about number one, at least during the transition, might there be a shuttle for people who went to the wrong place and get them to the right place? I maintain a concern about the mental health services that incarcerated youth are receiving and whether or not this program addresses that issue. And also, just from my personal experience trying to find services for my family, I understand now there's a lot of video type of appointments that are offered, and whether or not that's included in this program, and what are the plans to enhance the services to children.
So let's start with your first question, and thank you, by the way. I hear all of these questions as being coming from people with concern, and so we share that as a group and as a department. As far as the rideshare or something to help people that get lost or get stranded, I think we have to work with DHS because, again, since they're the closers of this clinic, they have some responsibility for linkage, and whether or not we can arrange transportation, that's something that you'd have to take up, or we'd have to take up with them. As far as the telepsychiatry or telemental health services, our Northeast clinic is fully equipped. One of the gifts of the pandemic, I should say, is that everything and everyone learned how to do virtual services, both privately, confidentiality, and securely. So a good number of the folks at Northeast have worked remotely, and they also see clients or patients remotely. So that won't change. In fact, I think it's an important and essential part of residency training for a contemporary doctor, especially with mental health and accessibility issues, for them to have that capacity. So I expect that will continue. Right now, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 75% of our services are in person, but actually probably I'd like over time to have more of those services in person because we think that having that human connection is really important. Was there another question that I might have missed?
Ari, did you have any follow-up?
Well, just the clarification regarding services to the incarcerated youth.
Oh, so DMH has a whole network of juvenile justice providers. They're child psychiatrists. They have an outpatient program called TOTS. And when people are released from carceral settings, be they halls or camps, we do provide those outpatient services. If they're receiving services at a routine program rather than through that system, then we do have knowledge about what restrictions are in place for both foster youth as well as youth who've been involved in the justice system.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience.
Thanks so much for having this meeting. Could you clarify how many patients are being affected by the closure of the clinic? When and how patients were informed about the closure? And then I also wanted to chime in on her question about DHS clarifying the reason for the decision.
I can tell you what I've heard, and these numbers are a little bit in flux. As some of you may know, not everybody who enters in services remains in services forever. Recovery is real. It happens. People get better. We were told that there were probably between 900 to 1,000 adult clients and about 150 to 160 child and adolescent clients. And as far as the notification to clients or patients about service changes, I'll let my colleagues from DHS answer that question.
Hi, I'm Talene Kishishin. I'm the Chief of Psychiatry here at LA General. We've been working with our administrator, Mr. Cordova, and all the leadership team, and we have been trying to notify patients in real time in their appointments via letters, via outreach, via phone calls, via case management. So we're trying our best to reach people through different modalities, understanding that one size does not fit all. So if we haven't made it to you, we will continue to reach out.
Just want to address the why. This is a decision that has been in discussion for at least 5 years. LA General is an outlier in terms of providing these services on a medical center campus. These services do not exist at Harbor UCLA, at Olive View Medical Center, at any of the other DHS hospitals. And really, it is the network that DMH oversees. So this transition is to plug in these clinics into the existing model of care there.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that we are now moving towards standardization of outpatient psychiatric care in the county. And we, for historical reasons, there was no intent or plan decades ago why we had a clinic here and the other county hospitals did not. So this was, I think, about standardization of care within the existing, as Dr. Bonds mentioned, very well staffed, highly experienced DMH outpatient clinic.
We'll go to our Zoom room for our next question, but I will definitely keep picking up the questions in the room as well. I'd like to invite Maria Arellano to ask her question. Maria, please unmute yourself.
Sí, mi pregunta es, por ejemplo, para personas que son jóvenes adultos que necesitan un servicio de salud mental, psiquiatría, por ejemplo, terapias psicológicas. ¿Cómo está ahorita la situación con respecto a listas de espera? Yo sé que existe mucha demanda, me da mucha tristeza que hayan cerrado esta clínica porque hay muchísima demanda, hay mucha necesidad, principalmente en nuestra comunidad. ¿Cómo está la situación ahorita para, por ejemplo, listas de esperas para esos jóvenes adultos, principalmente en nuestras áreas, por ejemplo, en el este de Los Ángeles?
María, pause, please.
Trate de pausar, María, disculpe. Okay.
Oh, sí.
When it comes to a child psychology, what is the situation? I know it's been very difficult, you know, for a lot of the kids. With the closure, it has affected a lot of the children, a lot of the youth. You know, what is the situation now when it comes to the program, how to get them, you know, restarted because they're going to very many challenges, and what is being done about it?
Sorry to make you pause, Maria. We'll ask Dr. Bond to respond to that question.
Okay, gracias. And thank you for this question. I want to say that, first of all, we know that children and adolescents are amongst the most vulnerable. And we're working to double down our efforts to make sure that each child is linked. During the developmental process, in terms of getting to see a psychiatrist or a therapist, there's a connection that's made. What we did learn, and one of the things that makes this a little bit more complicated, is that there is an adult residency program and also a child psychiatry fellowship. So the Child Psychiatry Fellowship will not be going to Northeast, so that is why children are not receiving services there. The Northeast Mental Health Clinic only serves adults. In order to serve these two different populations, generally there have to be some safety walls in place. Children have to be protected. They can't be in the same spaces as, say, someone who might have a criminal background. So for that reason, the Northeast Clinic does not actually have the capacity, nor is there a plan for there to be child psychiatry services there. We don't have the space, we don't have the expert staff that we would need, and we don't have the child psychiatrist. And USC has found another home for the Child Psychiatry Fellowship. So what we're left with is looking at our network of legal entity providers. Those are programs that offer services to children and families within that service area. Because within service area 4, one of the gaps is that we do not have a directly operated child program. There are several child and adolescent providers in the service area. And one of the things that Stacy's team is doing is to link those children and families with providers in that area. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of distance and timeliness, we're being able to meet those expectations. So our goal is to try to decrease the disruption, but there has to inevitably be some change because of the logistics of this transformation.
Maria Arellano.
Sí, cuando me refería a jóvenes adultos, me refería a una población más o menos en un rango de 18 a 24 años.
Okay, un
Quería
momento.
saber, sí, perdón, quería saber si cómo estaba la situación, había listas de espera, cómo está la situación para que esos jóvenes adultos reciban
Okay.
servicios de salud mental.
Deme un momento. Okay, when I was talking about youth, we're talking about range between 18, ages between 18 and 24. What is the situation? What is the plan for them to get into the program in order for them to get the services?
The youth between the ages of 18 to 24 fall into what we call transitional age youth, TAY, and the Northeast program is able to accommodate them. And right now, we're actively scheduling appointments as people connect with our team to plug them in. I don't know if Avilio or Stacy have more to add on that. But when you say the situation, I think you're asking, are they able to access the services? And to that, the answer is yes.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Buenos días, María. En su pregunta de si hay lista de espera, no tenemos lista de espera en Northeast. Si un adolescente de la edad que mencionó de 18 a 24 llama a mi clínica, yo le puedo dar una cita en la misma semana. No tenemos lista de espera, tenemos terapistas, tenemos psiquiatras, tenemos enfermeras. Like I'm mentioning to Maria, we do not have a waiting list. We do provide appointments within 5 to 7 business days. And because the residents are moving from LA General, the services in regards to the psychiatry are going to remain the same, but there is no waiting list. And we do serve the population of 18 to 24. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next question in the room, and I've got my eyes on my next guest.
I appreciate the clarification around the transition of services and how you're trying to make it seamless between DHS and DMH. I guess Avelio might have answered my question a bit, but in terms of current patients at the DHS clinic and the timing of their appointments, is it going to be, within like a week as well, or is it, is there going to be a wait time because of the additional absorption of patients?
I think the answer to that is July 1, I would argue, and I think other doctors in the room can clarify, can confirm, is one of the scariest days in healthcare in this country because everybody who's in training transitions. The interns become residents, the PG4s sometimes graduate, become fellows. So there is this transition that's a natural cadence in healthcare education. Training programs are accustomed to that. Residents have known about this change. They've been involved in the discussion. Faculty have been quite involved in this change as well. So the understanding that I have is that we're making their schedules, we're seamlessly transferring from the LA General Clinic to the DMH Clinic. So our staff are actively scheduling. So those folks that have ongoing care, they'll be scheduled with their same provider if that provider is still with the residency training program. For those who aren't and for intakes, we'll get a whole new crop of second and third year interns who'll be starting up at this site. So those folks will have availability on their calendars. So there should not be a wait. It should be, as I said, fairly seamless.
Okay, we're going to take our next question from the Zoom chat room. Kelly, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Good morning. My name is Kelly Mahonen. I'm a licensed trauma therapist in practice for 15 years. I'm also the mother to two special needs children who I adopted from foster care. The Child Site Clinic has been vital to our family's stability. We were previously seeing a DMH-based psychiatrist who was unfamiliar with the complex medical needs of our kids, the overlapping diagnoses of autism, of FASD, as well as the impact of trauma on my kids' experiences. And when working with an uninformed DHS or DMH psychiatrist, one of our children ended up receiving an inappropriate medication, inappropriate dosage increase, which resulted in a psychiatric crisis that nearly led us to hospitalization. The psychiatrists at the LA General Child Site Clinic were able to stabilize our family, and I'm really concerned that other families now are no longer going to have access to that kind of expert care with people who really understand the needs of medically complex kids. Part of what was powerful is that they were able to access all of our children's records at LA General. There was a comprehensive care. They were able to look at all the specialists that our children see, and that's no longer going to be available to our new caregiver. I received the letter of this change on Tuesday, and I would really like a clear answer as to why we are being given 1 month notice. We have learned that it's going to take 6 months to see a psychiatrist who actually has the specializations in our children's diagnoses. It is not safe for us to see a random psychiatrist who may not have the kind of specialization that our children need. So I'm really curious to hear a true explanation of why, if this has been in the works for such a lengthy period of time, why are we being told about it a month prior to the transition?
So first of all, let me acknowledge your suffering and pain and what you've been through. And while I can't change that, I at least want to not diminish it and not dismiss it. But I can only speak for my involvement in this process in terms of notifications. I do know that there is a standard that 30 days is the minimum time of notification. As far as the specialized services that you speak of, I would make the statement that within the DMH network of providers, we do have many that specialize in kids with complex and special needs, but it's not all. Training is ongoing. We have trauma-informed care training. We have staff who actually trained at USC at that child program. In fact, we are working with the residency and fellowship to see what resources we can provide. And when individual events like this occur, that's why we're giving these resource folks so that we can troubleshoot. Stacy knows the network of providers in Service Area 4 quite well, and actually she has links throughout the county. So when we hear about these very compelling situations and special needs, we will try to address them one by one.
We're going to go to our next question inside the meeting room, and that is Diego.
Thank you, Heather. It's more of a note than a question, but I just want to start by thank you, Dr. Bones and DMH for being here and for your presentation this morning. My name is Diego Rodriguez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Alma Family Services, and we are one of the child and adolescent service providers that Dr. Bones just mentioned. We're part of that network of support. Here at LA General's campus, we have provided psychotherapy and case management services since 2014. And in partnership with the Wellness Center agencies, we also offer peer support groups, healing circles, and linkage to resources to address basic needs of our community members. We've been in communication with DMH, which has ensured that we have the resources to support with this transition. We are supporting to ensure that clients that are connected to us are giving continuity of care. We also being able to expand our capacity, and we're excited because we've brought 2 new clinicians. They're starting this week, and we are recruiting 2 additional clinicians to continue this network of support for clients and community. So just want to add this note in appreciation for DMH's continued support, and we look forward to working both with DMH and, of course, with community at large in supporting this transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. I appreciate that. And as you said, there's a whole network of providers. It's not just one. And inevitably, the first match may not be the best match, but it's usually not the only match. So if things aren't working out, do let us know.
Another question from the meeting room.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Alma Crespo. Yo quiero pedir ayuda sobre las personas mayores, para agarrar terapia sobre la salud mental, porque a nosotros las personas mayores nos está afectando mucho, tanto a los jóvenes como a los mayores. Y yo veo mucha necesidad sobre muchas personas que preguntan cómo agarrar la ayuda. Oh, perdón.
Okay, so my question is when it comes to adults, mental health, we are being affected just as much as the youth, and that we need a lot of help, for the elderly and seniors pretty much. So I would like to know how is it that we can get more help?
Sí, es lo que necesitamos. ¿Cómo informarnos? Porque yo encuentro mucha persona que necesita ayuda.
Yes, I just like to know how is it that we can become informed, because I do run into a lot of people that are in great need.
No encuentran cómo encontrar la información necesaria para poder llegar a que nos ayuden con las consultas.
They don't have the way to find the proper information to get to the point where they can get the right help.
Es la ayuda que yo pido para nosotros las personas mayores. Gracias.
That's the kind of help that I'm requesting for us, the adults.
So help comes in many different shapes and forms. And thank you, gracias, for your question as well. I would say that the navigators that I've put on the screen, Evangelica Gonzalez is the first person. But should that fail, if anybody needs to get more resources, there's the DMH website that has resources listed according to service area. There's also the helpline, 1-800-854-7771, 24/7 in English and in Espanol. There's a flyer that Stacy has that number, I think. She's gonna put them in the back of the room. So should there be people that have additional questions, I realize this is a very short period of time. It's a emotional forum because change is difficult. We're doing our very best to manage the change and to partner with our colleagues at DHS. One of my hopes, and I'll be selfish in saying this, is that some of those 36 residents who come through the Northeast Center will choose to stay in LA County and practice mental health or psychiatry. So I think that we're trying our best to provide the best training experience, the best patient experience that is as, state of the art as possible. I think we'll be possibly even in a better place given the resources that DMH has. And we're just beginning to touch the tip of that iceberg.
We'll take another question from the room.
I'm back. Just one question. Wouldn't have, as far as, because again, I saw when Northeast moved from Herman to where they are now, I saw a lot of people lose track of their services that they were getting. Was there ever thought that use the same building instead of moving, just putting staff at the building that they're using now? That would have been one, I think, to help with the transition if people were there. I don't know if that's the possibility, because we know that there are other agencies that are on the campus, like DMH already. Would have that, been something that just to have it here, right? And again, I am very concerned about what the lady talked about her kids, and I know that understanding the child's and any client's medical records does affect can affect their mental health, right? So are they going to be able to access that information and having the right therapist or a psychiatrist, it's really important because we know that they're young and, it's going to be a hard process for them growing up.
I'll take the second part of that question. And again, since I don't know all of the decisions behind the change, I have to defer on that one. But there is a tool, in addition to transferring medical records, there's the Health Information Highway where we can connect electronic health records so that we basically import into our health system all of the information that's been stored in the health system medical record at USC, the clinic here. As far as hospital, I think earlier someone talked about hospital transitions. There is a tool known as Lanes that connects all of the facilities that we're discussing so that people can access that information, everything from laboratory, prescription history, inpatient summaries, all of that is available, fortunately, through electronic interoperability of electronic health records. Others may have more comments about whether or not it's a viable plan to retain the space.
I'm kind of wondering if this seems to be a little bit of a broader question that spans beyond just mental health. One of the things that I know that we've identified time and again is helping our clients and patients move through a healthcare system that is complex. And I've often imagined like peer navigators, patient navigators. I think I heard of something like this in other facilities. I'm not sure if Rancho's doing it, but where other patients, such as people that are really like, they learn the system, learn to navigate, can actually coach other patients through it. I wonder if this is like some of that, right? Like accessing and really walking people through those really the minutia of how long am I going to be waiting on the phone, or what are the things that I have to say in order to be able to get that appointment in a week because it's an urgent matter. How do I release my records to make sure that the right people get them, and how quickly can we get them to them? So that's just like the navigation piece that I don't know. I know, Diego, you have mentioned at some point that there's some like potential funding. I'm not sure if that's something that we can do, but I just think that those services are so key. And I wonder if we're kind of like all alluding to that. So just a comment.
Thank you, Dr. Carla. We've got a response.
Hi, thank you for your really important question. As Dr. Bonds mentioned, yes, there's Lanes that has a connection within the different electronic medical records. I wish we all had all the same records. We are also working on different avenues to make sure that the patient records are seamlessly transitioned from the DHS system to the DMH system. So we're working with both systems medical records to have a summary of medical conditions, the recent labs, the medications, the progress of the treatment that we will be transporting from one EMR to the other for patients that are being connected.
And just to go back, I think your point about peer navigators, we sometimes call them peer specialists, community health workers. DMH has a robust network, and even at the Northeast Clinic, there is a peer resource center, which is sort of a drop-in resource for people who want to get connected to someone who has lived experience. So all of those things exist. I don't know how robust those resources have been at the clinic here. So again, I'm always the person who tries to look for the bright side, the silver lining. There may actually be some amplifications of care that come as a result of the transition.
Thank you so much. We've run a little bit over time, but we could not be more grateful for the time from our colleagues at the Department of Mental Health to come and really answer all of these questions about how we're going to proceed with this really, really significant change in how the services are being provided to our Eastside community residents. Are there any final urgent questions? If not, we'll move on to our next presentation. Okay.
Well, very excitingly, our next presentation relates back to mental health services provided on this campus. We've got a presentation by the Department of Public Works. Alicia Ramos is going to share with us some of the upcoming facilities that are being developed here on our campus to provide mental health care to the patients.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here this morning. My name is Alicia Ramos, and I'm with LA County Public Works. And I just want to express my appreciation for being back in person again and for all those that helped us through the virtual meetings that took place during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, but it is very nice to be here in person again. So we want to take you through some of the updates of the projects that are coming up on the LA General campus. And we're going to focus on projects that we are doing with DMH in the Restorative Care Village, what we call Phase 4 and Phase 5. Next slide, please. Not coming up? Okay. We have a PDF file that might work easier. And if you don't have access to it, I can give it to you on a thumb drive. Okay, and just go ahead and flip to the second slide. Yeah, it's just taking time to load. So, okay, all right, fantastic. So this is great. All right, so we've come to you folks before to give you a heads up of what we're planning here. And these projects do take place. We're good, okay. So these projects do take place in what was at one time the Women's and Children's Hospital. So we demolished the hospital, and we are now using that as the site to plan our RCV Phase 4 and 5. So what we had brought to you previously in the red is the location of our Restorative Care Village Phase 1, which is open and operational, and it has been since 2022. What you see in the blue square there is that site where our new projects are going. Next slide, please. So this is what we brought to you previously. We showed how we were splitting up the site. So what you see in the purple is a 2-story building that we were doing for a joint effort between DMH and Department of Public Health. In the blue is where we are developing what we call Phase 5, which is a subacute psychiatric facility, and that will be taking place a little bit later than the Phase 4. Let's and let me just point out some numbers here. With the residential withdrawal management and the mental health urgent care center, this is the 2-story building that you see in the purple area. The residential withdrawal management, which is headed up by DPH, will provide 32 beds. In the subacute facility up top that you see in the blue, that will be run by DMH, and that will have 96 beds among a 3-story building. So just to give you some idea of the size and magnitude. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's what we have conceptually developing right now. What I showed you before was just massing, how we were dividing up the site. The reason we're dividing up the site is because, one, we have 2 distinct buildings, but we also have 2 distinct contractors that we're working with. Not typical that we would do that, but I want to highlight the reasons why we're doing it, which is really schedule. We know that the DMH facility right now at Exodus has a limited time span there, and they will be moving over to this new building. We want to do everything we can to make sure that they have that facility to move into as soon as they need to. So there was a need to kind of split it, make sure we pursue that first. And now we're underway with the Phase 5. We will be awarding that contract in July. So let me just point out what you see in front of you. This is the conjoined site. This is our vision and concept that the 2 buildings will occupy. And I'm going to jump into some of the details of the buildings themselves. Next slide, please. What we're looking at here is the 2-story DMH DPH building. And again, I want to preface this by saying these are concepts, these are preliminary renderings because nothing's been built yet. We have contracted for this building. We have the design underway, and that will go to jurisdictional permitting. And then we'll have more refined images that we can share with you. But this gives you an idea of scale, and I hope that that starts to communicate what the vision is starting to look like. Next slide. And this is some of the features that 2-story building will be including, which is outdoor space. One thing we learned from RCV Phase 1 that is currently operational is the need for outdoor space. Folks have interior facilities and program but getting out into the outdoors, getting away from those buildings, having a space to kind of circulate in outside is very important. Those are some of the lessons learned that we're trying to take forward into phase 4 and phase 5. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're looking at phase 5. This is the 3-story building, the larger 96-bed Department of Mental Health run facility. And again, preliminary concept drawings, what you're looking at, just to orient you, the street that you see down at the bottom would be Mission. Next slide, please. These are some of the images of the interiors that we're trying to create. We really want these facilities to be not just welcoming for the potential patients that'll be there, but for the staff that are there all day long, all week long. These need to be compelling, engaging spaces. And then down below, you can see one of the elevations of how, again, conceptually, we're thinking it may look. Next slide, please. Outdoor spaces, again, something that we want to accentuate, not just in the 2-story building, but on the 3-story, and then within the whole site as we look at it from the larger picture. Next slide, please. This is a nighttime view, and this is important for several reasons. To orient you, the street we have kind of going in this direction is Mission. The other street right here is Zonal. So it's that very important intersection that happens at the northwest part of the campus. It really is sort of a doorway to the community. And I want to point out that we've got this, I'm just going to go show you. I want to point this out because this site is complex. That little area I just pointed out belongs to the city of Los Angeles, but it is essentially on our medical center campus, so it kind of becomes part of us, although we don't have all the privileges of what to do with it, right? So we are involved in conversations with LA City to see what we can do for that portion of the land. It becomes sort of that entrance gateway to the med center. We want to be able to express a welcoming entrance, something that's useful for the campus, but we know that we have some limitations in terms of what we can do with it just because of ownership. But the other reason I point that out is because this site, as I said, is complex. We have now all of the contributors that we expect to have some influence and input on the bigger site, meaning we have the design builder or contractor for the first phase, phase 4. They're already contracted, they're already finishing up design. Phase 5, we just completed that solicitation process and we've identified who that successful proposer is. We will be going to the board to award a contract on July 9. That gives us our second design contributor. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because now that we've got the contributors identified, we can start to look at the big picture together. And that means with involvement from HICP, from the Med Center to say, we have all these minds now, let's start to talk about not just what the buildings are, how they sit in this campus, and what we will be doing. For those of you who were present for RCD phase 1, if you recall, we had a community engagement component that was really, really helpful to the process. Hopefully it was helpful too to the folks in the HICP and to the Med Center. We want to replicate that again. When I say replicate, it's the engagement, it's the involvement, it's the input, it's the co-ownership, if you will, of what's being created on this campus. We're just now getting into that phase since like I said, we've got the contributors identified. We're now negotiating to get the contracts put to bed. And I hope to have a lot more information relative to that topic when I meet with you folks next month. So just more to come. Just want to keep you up to speed with what we're doing. Here's some dates just to have in mind. These projects are on expedited schedules. I think we heard earlier from DMH, the need for services is very intense. We know that we have current patients, we have others that need services. So there is a lot of emphasis behind getting these buildings up, built, occupied, and providing services. So with those schedules, we've already awarded the contract for phase 4. That went late last year. Design is underway, and we should start construction this summer. So groundbreaking event is something that we're also looking at, and we'll bring that information to you shortly. Phase 4, we hope to have done by the end of 2025 and have in service by fall of 2026. For the larger 3-story building, Phase 5, again, we're going to the board on July 9 to award that construction contract. We will start construction in January 2025, and we are pushing to complete by the end of 2026 with the expectation that we'll have services available winter of 2027. Okay, with that, I am available for questions, but Heather, I'll leave it to you because I know we're managing time.
That's right, but we are delighted to take some questions. Monica.
I'm just gonna talk about the design.
Yes.
We're gonna talk about the design in a committee because it seems like the construction for one of the buildings starts this summer.
It
right?
does. It does. For Phase 4, we'll start construction in the summer. Yeah.
And so the design needs to be set, and you know how I feel about the squares. Just letting you
Yeah.
know.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Do we have any other questions, clarifications for Alicia and the RCV next phases?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. That
Sure.
was great. I'm curious just to know a little bit more about what the licensing process is like.
Oh, that's a great question. And I don't know if our DMH folks want to talk a little bit. I don't want to put you on the spot, but let me just speak from the experience that I've had with the RCV Phase 1 and some of our other RCVs at other campuses. We know that the licensing process can be variable. So typically we would say probably no less than 6 months, and that's with a lot of emphasis to make sure that we've got all the ducks in a row, if you will. But at times we allow for even more. So we are looking at potentially something that could run to 10 months. I think there's every ambition and effort to say, let's get it done sooner. But again, not knowing exactly what those barriers could be, obstacles. It comes down, when we get licensing done, it's a matter of having the facility done first. We've got to get that done. It's a matter of also working with the services provided. So a lot of moving pieces. It's a great question because that has an ultimate impact on when can you actually open. It's one thing to finish a building. It's one thing to be serviceable and ready to go there. So it is a big element. So when I say that we're done with construction, the project's not done. That's why you'll see the service dates still push out quite a bit. I wish I could give you an exact, but I would say no less than 6 months. Sometimes you could look at something closer to 10, but again, I think there's every ambition and effort to try and get this done sooner. You're welcome, yeah.
We'll take our next question from our Zoom room. Ari Arambala, if you unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned that corner and the design and the fact that it's a special corner. So my question is around number one, leveraging what we learned, and kind of sounds like you did with the outdoor spaces. What we learned from the design and community input for the recuperative village, and how that input could be applied in these projects in terms of color, kind of a unifying element, not only to the other existing buildings or the future buildings, but also General Hospital itself, the old historic, and then including the project that's going on across the street, and how all these are going to work in tandem from a community access, from a community service, from creating a place, that is important to the community through the design process. So, you mentioned going out to bid and all that. It sounds a little scary because it means it might be somebody fresh, new, who doesn't know our community, who doesn't have that connection. And community has worked to inform that for a while, including through the HICP. And so, I'm wondering, how do we have that threaded through this process?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ari. And Ari, I know you've been a member of the past participation that we had in RCV Phase 1. I want to be very transparent with how this process is going for these phases. A little bit different than how we did RCV phase one. The way we did RCV phase one, we had all our bidders, if you will, and I should say shortlisted, because we dealt with the three shortlisted firms. And we had a community engagement component to give information to choosing who that successful proposer would be when it came to community engagement and also the aesthetic of the building, which is something we looked at. With these two projects, and there's dynamics across the board here. There's schedule dynamics, there's budget dynamics, there is the program itself, the lessons learned. So when we talk about community engagement and the opportunities that we're looking at, we're really trying to keep focus on what are the possibilities, and then what are ultimately the possibilities that we together want to pursue, keeping in mind that we do want to meet schedules, we do want to meet budget. And I think this is something that I found to be a point that the community took with a lot of sincerity and appreciation last time. I think what really helped was us presenting to you folks where those opportunities are, what are the constraints. When we talk about budget and schedule, there are absolute constraints there that we have to work within to say, we've got to accomplish these projects, recognize that there are limits to some things if we want to keep them priorities, right? We want to get these facilities open. We want to meet them on some fairly tight timelines. But we also don't want to sacrifice what is the community's input here? What is the ownership? So when I say that we're looking at possibilities right now, we're going to come back next month with hopefully more description about what those possibilities are, Ari. We'll come back with an understanding that our contributors are also giving their input. We entrust these contractors to say, look, we want these buildings, we want them on this timeline. And they've come back to say, yes, we can do that. But we can do that knowing here are our constraints, but where are our opportunities? So I think what I'm trying to say is that we have a process ahead of us that will include community engagement. What those specific elements are right now, we don't exactly know. We're looking at that basket of opportunities, if you will, to come back and bring those and then work closely with you folks to say, which ones are priorities, right? We may not be able to do everything. There may be some things that are just higher priority. If we're going to put our energy and budget into a particular area, this is where the community wants to see that. It may not go across the board and say that we get everything, but it's a matter of where do we decide where those priorities are. Still keeping in mind the focus of budget, the focus of time. So again, I hope that I'll have more to bring to you folks in a month, and we can start to have that dialogue of where the priorities are.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I do have one comment in the chat. It was from one of your earlier statements. It says, can we get an elaboration on ownership?
Ownership. Okay, I've been using that word ownership. Well, I mean, from a literal standpoint, right? This is a county asset. When we talk about ownership, we understand that just because the county is the one putting this forward in terms of financing it, budgeting it, folks come here to receive services. There is a stake that our patients have in these projects. Our staff has a stake in these projects. We have an obligation to the community to give a project that will be long lasting and will be able to provide not just the services, but the longevity to the community, giving you a good quality product. So when I say ownership, it's about that collaboration. It's not the county coming here and saying, we've built this for you, now go occupy it. We want to make sure that what we're building for you is something that you feel you've had the ability to take part in. When you go there to receive services, when you go there because you're part of the staff, this is your occupation, but hopefully you've had an opportunity. And I say you, it is more of a legacy. We've had folks who have been involved with RCV phase one who may not be here for phase 4 and 5. Sometimes your involvement in a project at some point is what you can give, and others will take that forward and complete it. So I do want to point out that when I say ownership, it's the involvement of everybody putting ideas together, but it's that legacy that we kind of pass on to each other. I've had some input. I may not be here for the entirety of the project, but others will take that. So I hope that gives some explanation to what I mean by ownership. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alicia.
All right,
well,
thank you.
I think we are done with this portion of the presentation as well. So
Thanking Alicia very much. And we're so excited about all of these incredible developments that are happening on our campus. So new life coming back and new services in so many ways. Next up, we'll hear a little bit more about some of those. We're going to talk to Alex Stamis from Century about the permanent supportive housing project that's coming on. Alex, I know you said you could keep it nice and tight. I'm going to ask you to hold true to that because we are running a little bit behind schedule.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks, Heather, and thanks, everybody. We are so happy to be here. You know, it's always a privilege for me. I don't often get to hear about trauma centers in my daily life as an affordable housing developer, but it's always a nice treat. So if we go to the next slide here, a lot of these things, in fact, all of them will likely be things that you have seen before. This is, as Alicia was mentioning, part of the restorative care village, the permanent supportive housing component. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is a rendering of what one of the buildings can look like. You can see both buildings here. It's a 300-unit, two-phase project. Half of the units will be for people who have formerly experienced homelessness, half for those who are low income, with a senior component included. The project also has very robust community serving spaces, a workforce kitchen, a peer respite, again, trying to tie in both to the workforce priorities we've heard in past community outreach, and also the tremendous health work that the broader campus does. We also see a special privilege in this building to have huge opportunities for community art. So you'll have, in some cases, 3-story murals, in other cases, 5-story murals. There will be a very extensive community outreach process to who the local artist is that does that mural. But ultimately, this is a project that, similar to what Alicia said, you know, it is us building it, but it's really your building, right? So there's that community ownership that we've seen over a number of community meetings. If you go to the next slide, please. These are some of the things we've been doing since we last met you. So most notably in there was another community outreach meeting. This was in Boyle Heights at the Youth Technology Center. We got a lot of good feedback, primarily about the offsite scope. So the building includes a number of improvements to Mission and Zonal, or Griffin, if you will, and ties into the broader LA County Valley Boulevard Transportation Improvement Project. The other things we've been doing are trying to find the financing for these buildings. As you may have heard, affordable housing finance is always a challenge of piecing together these multiple sources. One thing that we've done recently is apply to the state of California for $35 million. $25 million of that would go towards the funding of phase 1. And then the remaining part of that money would go towards funding infrastructure improvements. That's sidewalks, streets, busways, crosswalks, all of those things that are needed to, again, make this part of the campus, which again is the gateway to the rest of it, really accessible to pedestrians. Also, we have worked over the last number of years with the community finalizing the design. We've then taken that design, prepared our drawings, and gone to the county for entitlements. So we are just ever so close. Every 3 days, I get a very small comment that we're turning. So we're really on the precipice. So it's an exciting time for the project. Once we have those entitlements, we can move even faster with the financing, hoping to start phase 1 at the end of next year, and then completing their 16 to 18 months thereafter. So I'm happy to take any questions, but like Heather said, I'll keep it short as need be.
Yeah, do we have any questions for Alex about the Century project? This is going to be our permanent supportive housing project located directly across the way from the project Alicia was just describing.
So I just, I really like what's been happening because I didn't like the building at all. But just like if you can see like before, now I like it a lot better. But it's just, I want you guys to see like the homage or like that it's, you see the like windows that they are. But if you look at the historic general hospital, it kind of balanced that out. So I think that's really good. And we always, I think me as a community member, my big thing is making sure that things are being built in our community that look like they belong, that are part of the history somehow. And I know newer buildings are not necessarily part of the history, but we want them to, you know, be something that can be part of the community. So I was just thinking about that right now.
Yeah, I actually inherited this project from someone you may have seen before, Gil Gonzalez, and I heard about those little Art Deco similarities, and I was very keen on those. I think that was a good idea.
So hi, I'm Yolanda Duarte, Board Chair for Elma Family Services. I've been a founding member since 2017, along with my colleagues here. And key and paramount to everything we do has been an inclusion and the importance and the focus of the community voice. And so when I hear things that bring hard on my ears, like we have priorities and we have to either judge between timeliness or budget, and we'll try to find opportunities for input. To me, that tells me that we haven't done a good enough job of reinforcing the whole purpose of this body, which was inclusiveness and to be heard. And so if we need to figure out how to work that into the process a little better, I'd like to help and figure out how we can do that. Because these voices that we heard today were out of concern. And that concern means that we're not addressing something. So let's work to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Yes, absolutely. When we think about the role of the Health Innovation Community Partnership, it is indeed to serve as a partnership between our community leaders, our resident advisors, the community-based organizations that serve this community, and just all the stakeholders that are really vested in ensuring the health and wellness of these communities around us. So we want to continuously bring that to the forefront, Yolanda, and appreciate your offer to help step in further to some of these incredible projects we're discussing here today, as well as the initiatives that are leading the county right now. So thank you so much for that offer and opportunity. And it's a wonderful transition, because if we have no more questions for Alex, next up, we're going to invite Wakas Reman from one of the staff members of Supervisor Solis, who's going to echo again the role and responsibility and positioning of the Health Innovation Community Partnership, as well as how that dovetails with Supervisor's vision to support this campus to be a community-serving health center of excellence. So with that, I think we have Wakas on the line, and we'll want to kind of invite him to join us via Zoom. Wakas, are you with us? Can you unmute?
Thank
There
you,
you go.
Heather.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy to be here. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. Hope everybody's doing well. I'll be super brief. Been listening to the conversation and always so thankful of the HICP and community partnership. Just here to talk again about Supervisor's commitment, Supervisor Solis's commitment and appreciation for this partnership, our journey for several years now, and incredible work that we've been able to do and accomplish together in turning not around the county assets, around the LA Journal, and bringing a shared vision to fruition for Healthy Village, but also the LA Journal campus that we're going to talk about next with the Centennial Partners, the Restorative Care Village that you saw earlier with Alicia Ramos, and a piece of it with Century Housing. And just very thankful in collaborating with you all and your feedback and partnership in terms of bringing about a community benefit policy, local hire, local targeted, reaping the benefits for local community from small business utilization in terms of creation of long-term family sustaining construction career and other services jobs that will result from these investments. And not only that, but the group's engagement in bringing several community supporting policies at the county board that included from housing elements, regional planning efforts, inclusionary housing ordinance, metro area plans, whether it's rent protections, the RSO, or the short-term rental ordinance, habitability ordinance, and many other initiatives. So nothing but grateful for your partnership. The journey continues, and Supervisor asked me to reinforce this message. My colleague Guadalupe Duran Medina, who more regularly joins these meetings, also extends her thanks. She couldn't join in person today because of another staffing that she's doing with the supervisor in East LA. But just here to say hello to you and just appreciate all of your work and collaboration with the First District. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Wakas. Wakas, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we do have a question/comment in the chat that maybe you could help respond to.
Absolutely.
The question is it fair to say there's a trade-off between being able to build quickly and efficiently versus the amount and timing of community involvement?
There certainly is. I wouldn't disagree. I do say that we have expedited some of the infrastructure project, but I also want to acknowledge, as Ms. Yolanda Duarte mentioned, the journey started around 2017. I was part of that journey right from the get-go. And I understand, like in the beginning, we had a lot of thoughts, a lot of good comments, a lot of good visions that were incorporated into the vision, and the refinement of those concepts and how the community benefits could be part of it. When the vision was created, I think at the time we had a bit of frustration of the vision being slow to kind of go towards implementation. So there are various phases, but once we get from project development to project design and implementation side of things start to move differently. Sometimes we are challenged with certain requirements with respect to funding deadlines, other constraints that come about. We were talking about restorative care village. I know there was some urgency to create a replacement facility for a mental health urgent care that is across the Marengo, and that replacement facility with Exodus had to be built before the lease goes out there. But I know we had that in discussion and planning for a while too. So it does happen at times where we have to move rather quickly on the implementation side. And then there is that trade-off that comes about. But we do our best to manage those. And I know our county departments and implementation team go alongside with us, helping achieve best of the both worlds.
Thank you, Wakas. I think we all would really lean into that, the best of both worlds. We want that community voice and representation and perspective, and then we want these services to come in as quickly as we can because we know there's a need for these services in the community as well. It is a tension and it is a lot of work, but we appreciate Supervisor's leadership on this, her concept for the Healthy Village idea. And then, of course, everyone around these tables here that have brought forth their great effort and ideas and respect for this community to bring the great services that we know that our residents and patients deserve. So I think, any final comments, Wakas, or any questions? Does anyone have any questions for the Supervisor's representation?
No, just again, thank you so very much. And I know we have come through a long journey. Supervisor is in her last term. We have approximately 2.5 years to complete or bring it to a major milestone. A lot of discussion and a lot of progress made towards bringing these facilities and assets back to community serving concepts. So we, I think, have defined our path forward with respect to the remaining work and look forward to your collaboration and achieving as much as possible this shared vision for the remainder of Supervisor's term. And we will reinforce and re-enhance our partnership as we have taken through some pause to the pandemic too, but post-pandemic as we reestablish and moving forward on these platforms, myself, Guadalupe, and the rest of the supervisor team, including herself, we're fully committed to fully support the community engagement process for the remainder of the term. So thank you so very much. Good to see you all again. and I'll hang on till 11 o'clock. Then I have to jump off another meeting. Thank you very much, Heather and Rosa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wakas. All right, next up, I'd like to invite a representative from the Department of Economic Opportunity who will introduce our final presentation of the day, which is our fabulous partners who are going to be working on the Centennial Development here on LA General's Medical Center campus. So Maurice, please come on up.
Thank you so much, Heather, and everyone. I just wanted to quickly note, I think Director Kelly LoBianco is on as well, and I think wanted to just say a couple of words at the start following Wakas, and thank you so much, Wakas.
Thank you, Maurice, and thank you, Heather. Good morning, everyone at the HICP. I'm regretful that I can't be here with you all in person today and be with Maurice to do this presentation and with our partners at Prime Store. I'm actually sitting in the East LA Library parking lot. I just spent the morning with Supervisor Solis in Guadalupe, actually giving out grants to small businesses in the area. But super excited that I could join for just a minute. We are super pleased to be here to give you an update on the Centennial Project. We have been engaging with you in this forum for many, many years. Your voice has been lifted from the very beginning about the needs and hopes for this development, through the feasibility study, the RFP process, through our evaluation, through the ENA. And so we are here at a new milestone where we are, at the cusp of signing our exclusive negotiating agreement with our partners at Prime Store on the Centennial Project. Want to make sure that you have the latest and greatest on those milestones. And also just reinforce the commitment that you just heard from Wakas, also from our Department of Economic Opportunity, who is leading this project with our partners. And just know that community engagement, your voice, is going to be central to this process going forward. And we look forward to coming to the HICP regularly to get your feedback and have an open dialogue, and also thinking of new and creative ways to engage our community members and our stakeholders. So thank you for giving me a quick moment to share. Maurice is going to give you all of the details, but I'm happy to be here and happy to be on this journey with you all. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So my name is Maurice Goldstein, and I have the humble privilege of supporting DEO in their capital development projects in this General Hospital West Campus Centennial Project. Next slide, please. Given timing, we'll end, the note from Wakas and Director LoBianco. Just wanted to echo, this is continued involvement in community discussions throughout. And next slide, please. We're so excited to be able to have the Centennial Partners and Prime Store here today to be able to start discussing with the community this amazing project. It contemplates a mixed-use project with affordable housing, community retail, access to wellness and wraparound supportive services. And we will be wedding the art of the possible with extensive studies and project work in the months ahead. And so are excited to be able to kick off and start these discussions. Next slide, please. So I wanted to take a few minutes today to be able to note that we'll be going in front of the board on June 25th for a motion to be able to kick off the Centennial Partners team in doing this work. And wanted to note General Hospital West Campus is an extremely complex project. There's a lot of deep, meaningful discussions with the community over the months ahead as to continue all of those discussions. And so the ENA before the board will extend the time frame from 18 months to 36 months and add $2.688 million for studies for project management costs and going over the extensive studies in order to complete due diligence and really wed that art of the possible with defining a project here. So we wanted to make sure to uplift that. Phase one will be the project definition. That'll take place over a year, where Centennial Partners will be conducting due diligence activities and completing a comprehensive project requirements assessment. We'll then transition to a second phase of planning, where we'll determine if there's additional studies that are necessary before entering into a third phase, which is the typical development phase for entitlement and development activities. That's normal to development projects. Next slide, please. And of course, community engagement will be and is interwoven throughout all phases of this project. And so just wanted to note that. And with that, bring up Leandro to be able to talk through their team and the project. Thank you so much and really appreciate it.
Buenos días todos. Me da mucho orgullo de estar aquí hoy. I will try to be concise and brief. And unlike Alex from Century and Maurice from Trifoletti, I'll be short. Could we go to our slides, please? Thank you so much. Yeah, well, this is good. So my name is Leandro Tyberg. I am president and co-founder of Prime Store Development. It is a company that I started 32 years ago in South Los Angeles. My father and mother, Juan y Rosita, we are immigrants to the United States, and we bought a little building in South Los Angeles at 6801 Southwestern. Unfortunately, it burned to the ground during the '92 civil unrest, and I left school to help rebuild that building. The process of rebuilding in South LA as a youngster changed my life. I realized that by healing the land, I was healing myself. And that altered the way I viewed what I wanted to do with the time on this earth that I've been given. My best friend and partner, Arturo Snyder, and I have been best friends since we were 12. And he and I decided to start this company called Prime Store together with the very direct intention of working only on projects that have reparative, healing, holistic community outreach concepts in a public-private partnership manner and exclusively serving underserved communities. That's all we've been doing for 32 years. LA is home to us, although many of us are immigrants, but this is the place where we came seeking asylum and seeking a better way of life. And it's our job to make sure that we are always giving back and that the work that we do is reflective of that concept. Everything that you're going to see today is not stock imagery. These are from our projects or from events that we've had. The mission statement defines our company, and it is the ethos of how we try to operate. Next, please. I served on the board of the YMCA for over 12 years, being very involved with Weingart, East LA, YMCA, Southeast, Crenshaw Y. And one of the partnerships that we had that affected me very deeply was with Father Greg Boyle at Homeboy. He actually used to provide all of our landscaping services throughout the portfolio. And at the Martin Luther King breakfast, he said something that affected me very deeply. He had said, in the end, there is no us and them. There is only us. Throughout human history, that's all there's ever been is us. That is the approach that we take when we embark upon projects like this project at Centennial, that Centennial Partners and Prime Store are going to be undertaking. The approach that we're going to take is in collaboration with the community, in collaboration with the county, in collaboration with all of you. We will need your help to both hold us accountable, but we will need your help to help us vision and dream what Maurice said is the art of the possible. At the end of the day, because it is us, all of us doing this together, it's important that our team be reflective of the communities that we serve. So as I mentioned, I was born in San Miguel de Tucumán in northern Argentina, a small place in the far north. And our director of development, whom we'll introduce, David Abasta, is Chilango. He was born in Distrito Federal in Mexico. Giovanna is from Sao Paulo. And Claudia Cardenas, who's been with me for, am I allowed to say, over 28 years at the company, is our director of outreach and engagement and local hire compliance. She's from the very faraway country of Northridge, but she actually was born here at the hospital, as have many of our staff. So this project and given the privilege to be selected is ridiculously personal, and it is a lifelong culmination of 32 years of work that we are really, really proud to be a part of. Next slide, please. Everything that we do is based on integrity, honesty, transparency, and the values that we were raised with. My feeling is that this community reflects those values and will demand the highest level of fidelity with these concepts. That is something that we are absolutely willing to embark upon and something that we will be beholden to. Next slide, please. On the community engagement goals, some of these I think are very important to read. Empower the community to express its concerns and desires, provide opportunity for community to inform the vision of the potential project, have ownership in the process, and continue to educate the development of the community's needs and aspirations. Deliver clear and concise information regarding the potential projects, partner and collaborate with stakeholders, create alignment around the priorities of the projects and their potential, create forums and opportunities for new ideas, uses, and concepts to be considered. And this image I love. This is one of the community events that we've been doing in Watts. We've been working on the Jordan Downs project with the city. I think this is our 18th year now, working in collaboration with the community on that project. Next slide, please. On the side of the engagement methods, we have much to learn, but we also have tools that we've employed in the past that have been partially successful that we want to continue to use. Participation in the standing meetings and events throughout the community to provide project information, participation in the monthly HICP meetings and regular updates to the co-design committee, project focus meetings and charrettes with focus groups, community organizations, and stakeholders, hosting informational community-wide meetings, events, workshops, and cookouts, door-to-door canvassing in multiple languages, project-specific website, social media impact campaigns, and direct access and open communication with the company principals. So I will be remaining involved throughout the entirety of this project as the lead person on direct communication with the community. I have my partner, Claudia Cardenas, who's the director of outreach, who's going to be assisting in that. With blessings from the county, we'll ultimately have an office here and be able to have a much more robust personal presence as well. And this image I love. This is one of our self-defense Zumba classes at Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza that we used to manage and we did the redevelopment for. Next, please. I'm not going to read all of these because there's a lot, but community outreach, community engagement, events, it is not an obligation for our company. It's a privilege, and it's what we love to do. It is literally what gets us up. It's what motivates us. It's not just the real estate itself. It's the people who occupy the real estate that matters more. We do over 140 event activations per year throughout our portfolio in Southern California, which is home to us. And we are extremely excited to begin the planning process of putting these events here at the campus. And this is our project at La Alameda, which is Florence and Alameda in the Florence Firestone unincorporated area. I think we were doing a health and job fair at the time. Next, please. And for this item, I'm going to call up my partner and Director of Development, David Abasta, who's going to talk a little bit through the 3 phases of the project, and then I'll come back. Gracias.
Thank you, Leander. Well, hello, everybody. I think the important part of what's being said and actually hearing what's the conversation around the other projects is the idea that community engagement and community input is not just an add-on, but has to be a part of how we come to what this project wants to be. There's a lot of decisions and trade-offs that will have to be made, and the only way we're going to make them is in collaboration with another, with an education process that brings us all together and that really educates us about what this community wants and builds on the years of work that the county and this HICP has made around community outreach and studies and millions of dollars spent on incredibly useful technical studies, but ultimately connecting that to how do we actually do it. This community has waited far too long to really see this transformation happen. And I think we share the supervisor's urgency to make that happen on an incredibly accelerated timeframe, which sounds crazy when you say 36 months. But when you see the size of this project, and we all know the complexities involved and the need to maintain a continuity of operations and support the future needs of the hospital and the other stakeholders involved, to interface with our new partners and neighbors on the projects that are around us, to really kind of build a cohesive placemaking opportunity that not just delivers uses, but builds a community here at this campus that addresses so many of the needs that this community wants and demands. And so that process really starts with us starting to work through what we call a comprehensive project requirements assessment that we think of as the guardrails. That brings us together to come up with what are the things that we need to do that must happen both practically and as a community to cause resolution to how we come up with a project plan. We proposed a vision for a project rather than a specific project, and our public RFP submittal was very clear about that. The only thing I can promise you is that what's in that RFP submittal is not exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be driven by this process. There's a lot of resources and teams that are going to be involved in this, and we look forward to talking with this group on a regular basis, as well as subcommittees of this group, and really bring that pace forward. So again, for the rest of this year and a little bit into next year, we're going to be doing something called a project requirements assessment. We're also going to be coming up with our master plan recommendations, which are more of a framework, as well as ideally the initial phases, as well as identifying scopes of work that can happen on an accelerated basis, whether they're CEQA exempt or have an independent utility that really set up the infrastructure for the future of this campus. So we're going to be working through that together and kind of coming back and reporting on that as we go forward. But again, the focus is on the outreach, the possible, and actually the practical of how do we bring that together in a financeable fashion. Because ultimately this project needs to happen for this community, and our focus then is on making it really happen. Next slide, please. Once that phase is concluded, we will then have the opportunity to finalize that agreement surrounding what the master plan approach is, what the expectations are, what the goalposts are, what the tools that we're going to have to bear, and likely the phasing that's going to need to happen to bring a project like this to fruition. In that, we will have also identified any remaining gaps in knowledge, in understanding, whether that's outreach-based, outside of the campus boundary-based, et cetera, things that we need to identify that really eliminate all of those roadblocks that projects like this will always encounter. Every one of the projects that has been presented to you today has encountered every little kind of thing and challenge that has. We're trying to get ahead of that at a macro level on this campus to really kind of bring that all together. And then the next phase after that is the traditional entitlement pre-development phase of a project, ultimately driven by a consensus-based approach that really has been built over the previous 2 periods. It's also informed by the technical practicalities and, oh, sorry, next slide. Apologies. That is informed by those practical realities that we've identified and really is focused on a executable plan that then is executable day one after that. At the same time, we hope to bring that next phase to fruition as quickly as possible. We understand that we're not going to rush that through a community engagement process, that the community is going to need to be a part of that the whole way through. So that's ultimately the balance that we're trying to strike. And that's how we're approaching this project, which we are so privileged to be a part of, and is really genuinely going to help kind of bring together, in our hopes and our aspirations, bring together all of the work that's being done on this campus, whether that's from the county agencies and the incredible services that they do, the partners that are bringing the restorative care village to life, and the, again, the many, many expressed desires, needs, and wants of this community and of the campus in general. Next slide. I guess our next opportunity is for any questions. I'm happy to answer them. We're very excited to embark on this journey with you all.
Here's our first question.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Daniel Jimenez, Director of Community Organizing with the Inner City Struggle. And I'm here representing a lot of our community members who couldn't be here today. But I have a couple questions. So the first two questions that I have is, can you elaborate a little bit more about the budget ask or the budget increment that is going to come from the June 25th motion? What is that money going to be utilized for? And did I hear right? Was it 36 months or 26 months?
36 months total. The first phase is of 10 months. I can happily answer that question. If you have others, I'll just go one by one. So the request to the County Board of Supervisors is to help bring together the team that's going to actually implement this project and really absorb, contextualize, and integrate all of the work that's been done over the past 5 years. It's really a big process of tying the community outreach, which happened in incredible ways, the technical studies, which were very proficiently performed, and all that, and tying them together with the needs of the stakeholders, whether that's the Department of Health, Department of Mental Health Services, everybody else that's involved in the campus, into a cohesive plan that takes all that information and integrates it. So we're going to be engaging architects, we're going to be engaging civil engineers, structural engineers. We've got engagements for legal about the land use strategy and how we go about most effectively implementing that in a way that is flexible but responsive to the community benefits that are going to be required of this project, and really kind of bring together our labor partners and everybody else to the table to work in a consensus-based fashion to arrive at that project description, let's call it, that really lets us move forward into these phases that, you know, will cost many, many, many multiples of that. And we hope to bring private investment to that, to those efforts.
Yeah, just to follow up really quickly.
Yeah.
My question was around the additional funding request through the motion that is going to be
Yes.
introduced on June 25th.
That's what that funding is for.
That's what the funding is going to be
Yes.
for? Okay. The second question that I have then is, through the community engagement process, we highlight affordability to be one of the top priorities of our community. Given that we know and understand that there is a high, there is a challenge, right, in getting as much affordability as possible in this building. So my question is, how are you going to ensure that the community's voice is put front when it comes to affordability, not just on what we call now affordable units, but deeply affordable units, right? And so that's the question, right? How are you gonna navigate that challenge with the current situation? And then the last question to wrap it up is, how are you gonna ensure that community is gonna be not only participating in the community engagement process, which we have, which have been very good to ID needs, but also the decision-making process where then these decisions are being implemented and are being part of the actual planning and design and, you know, all of the things that we have done with other projects, right? Like, yeah, my question is, how are you going to be ensuring that the community's voice is going to be part of the decision-making process?
Sure. I'll take those in reverse order if you don't mind. I think the second point is really important. I think the only way we're going to achieve what we need to achieve on this project is by engaging in a process of mutual education, of not just having listened to what the community wants, but understanding really what the community wants, and also helping the community understand how we come out with trade-offs. So I think that process is really one of getting on the same page about, say, things like funding practicability or square footages and things like that, and really kind of bringing the community engagement to the decision-making process rather than presenting a proposal. It's really kind of engaging the community in that thinking process, let's put it that way, really putting the community at the core of that decision-making and presenting the trade-offs in an honest, transparent way, and not necessarily presenting them as like, here's why we're doing what we're doing, but rather, here are the things we're trying to balance. What do you guys think about how we should do this? And really, I'm not expecting everyone to become an expert about this stuff, because that's a very challenging thing. But I think ultimately, the only way we get there is by building the trust and building the mutual education process. So to answer your question, it's how we do projects. We whether that's the name, the design, the program, to your point about that stuff, is really heavily influenced by communities. And in fact, we find that our projects are most successful when they are most informed by our communities. So that, I want to just make that very clear about how we plan on engaging engaging in the community decision-making process, community-driven decision-making process. I think the first question on affordable housing is actually just really critical, so I appreciate you asking. The project needs to provide incredibly significant amounts of affordable housing to this community. We are committed to bringing the most amount of affordable housing, and whether that's deeply affordable, which is absolutely a need in this community, and thank you for highlighting that, as well as the needs of this community that exist immediately surrounding, that is impacted by things like gentrification and, you know, price pressures and things like that. So really trying to bring a full spectrum of housing for this community. Project is for this community, and so our housing approach is really one of trying to figure out how much we can bring, and our partners will tell you how challenging the financing and all of that is, but we are actually have the benefit of having great partners in that process. And so ultimately for us, it's also about prioritizing that affordable housing as a kind of core part of our mission. So we like to think about it as, how do we bring the most amount of affordable housing to this campus? And again, there are trade-offs about size, location, phasing, how long is it going to take to do, et cetera. But really, I can't express enough how much our focus is on bringing the most amount of affordable housing. There are other programmatic needs on the campus. There are also other community building needs on this campus, the things like retail, commercial, employment opportunities, which also benefit the communities that are benefited from affordable housing. And so our focus is really on trying to tie those together in a cohesive fashion.
We have additional questions for our Prime Store partners. Questions about the Centennial Project? We're obviously in very early phases.
Very
as
early,
we know.
but we're excited to be here, guys.
Yeah,
There's
exactly. Oh, I was going to say, oh, good. Yeah, I was just going to say my chat. Thank you for notifying me. So, oops, there we go. So I see a question here. Okay, that's a thank you and appreciation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so sorry, I am not seeing the question.
I think it was just I think Wakas had to step off.
Yeah, Wakas stepped off,
Okay.
as well as Kelly,
Yeah.
thanking us very much, as well as Father Chris Ponett. Then we got one more. Okay, here we go. I do have a question now.
Yeah.
Is there a minimum baseline for the affordable housing goals?
Yeah, so the project requires a minimum baseline of 30% affordable housing, period, point blank. We call that the minimum for a reason. Ultimately, this project is going to be focused on the affordable housing. I don't know how else to express that. I think the goal is really ultimately to bring the most amount of affordable housing. We don't focus on percentages because, believe it or not, the percentage is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. And ultimately, affordability is driven by what the community wants and also the prioritization. But just to be clear, the baseline minimum is 30%, but I want to emphasize, underline, circle, and highlight minimum on that number. And then I think that was the answer, short answer to that question.
There was going to be, actually, my apologies, there was a raised hand in the chat, which I missed. I'd like to invite Jasmine Perez to ask her question. Jasmine, if you'd like to unmute.
Hi, Jasmine.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question around the plan for these community meetings. Is there a set schedule anticipated already in especially with the upcoming hearing on June 25th?
I can just answer broadly speaking. We're actually working on fully implementing that. The negotiations around how to framework this plan have been a very thoughtful process of partnership with Trifoletti, with the Department of Economic Opportunity and the county overall. And so I think the short answer is there will be a very clear, published, and transparent plan, and one that actually is going to be driven also by the community's input about what additional meetings or communications they want. I don't want to undersell what Leandro said. He's my partner, but he's really the founder of this company. He's going to make his contact number available to anyone in this community. You'll have mine as well. The community outreach is going to be formal and public, but it's also going to be every day. Our project team is driven by that process. And so we will have a clearly, Yasmin, to answer your question, we have a clearly published set of events and activations in partnership with the foundation, who's kindly supporting us in that effort. But we'll also have a very robust, dynamic process where if additional outreach is necessary, we're happy to have it. There basically can't be too much, but we also want to be mindful of people's time and make good use of people's time in that process.
Yes, thank you so much. And our Prime Store partners plan to be with us at the HICP meetings on the regular. So you can expect to see people here pretty much every month, and we will keep you updated with the progress. As we mentioned, this project in particular, I think, has an incredibly long window to come to fruition. So there'll be many, many phases and places and times for that community engagement and for these questions to get a more refined answer as more information comes to bear. With that, we have kept you past time today. We appreciate all of your time together, both those online with us, those in the room with us, and we're very excited to draw to a close our June Health Innovation Community Partnership meeting. Our next meeting will be on the second Friday of July because of the 4th of July holiday, so we'll look forward to seeing you all on July 12th. Until then, have a wonderful month of Pride, and we'll look forward to seeing you in July.